All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with Drew Dinsick. Today we're going to talk NBA. We'll talk Magic Cavs Game 7. Look ahead to both Eastern Conference Round 2 series. And then we will talk about the West as well. And then we'll close out with some NHL chat, specifically the Eastern Conference, as we're recording. Vegas-Dallas is 1-1 late second period. Which seems destined for overtime. But first, Drew, now that you're back from Kentucky, how was the Derby?
The experience remains among the cooler things that I get to do as part of a media member in the world of sports. And a sincere thank you to the folks who, kind of put us in the place to, get that done. The support we got from the folks who weren't even there was outstanding. Getting all of the content we were recording up digitally was pretty cool. And the gratitude from the suits in person was surprising and awesome. I loved it. We met a lot of the NBC C-suite guys, and they were all very, very thankful for the work that was put in, and that was hugely cool. So overall, it was a huge success from the standpoint of just doing my job. But the Derby itself left kind of a bad taste in my mouth. That was a bad race, and it went poorly, not just for me, but I think from did you learn anything other than the rail was hot? Like, that's kind of all you got there. And people may take away from that Mystik Dan is a better horse than we gave him credit for, and that his run in the Southwest was, somehow more meaningful. And I guess I shouldn't, look past the fact that Kenny McPeak, who's been in the sport a long time and, had a lot of good runners, him doing the double, but winning both the Oaks and the Derby is pretty spectacular. It's so rare. We haven't had a horse and jockey do that since 1952, Jay. Like, this is really, really tough. And the run, he held on by the hair on his nose. And it was cool to be a part of it, but I won no money. In fact, I've been having a good day, and I had a smash in the 11 race right before. And as is tradition, you put it all right back in on the Derby, trying to hit some exotics, and I don't think I had a single winning wager. And then the matchups ended up not being a total disaster. But my goodness, Just Steal and Just a Touch being at the very bottom of the board was pretty painful. And TO Password and Forever Young being at the top of the board was very painful. So, ultimately it was, it was what do you call it? Par for the course, I guess, in 2024 for me. I'm on an epic cold streak right now. And I'm losing unders with Knicks games that are in the 90s going to overtime. I'm losing an under on a Game 7, which we're going to talk about in a minute, where there's 66 free throws, and Gary Harris is making, just meaningless step back threes to take it over the total in a Game 7. And so, yeah, I mean, my head's in a weird place about betting right now, and I'm absorbing a pretty aggressive losing streak, honestly.
Well, I'll give you a piece of advice. It's the only thing that I can really offer, is when I feel bad about a gambling loss, what I do is I go back and watch highlights of the Florida Panthers and their run to the Eastern Conference championship in the NHL last year. And the reason for that is it's not my biggest win, not even close, but it was just that run. I just ran insanely good. Like, they got every break. They won every game in overtime. Literally, every time it went to overtime, they won. They were down 3-1 in round 1 against the greatest regular season team of all time in the Bruins. I think Brad Marchand has a breakaway in Game 5 to win it with 3 seconds left in regulation. They're up 3-1 in the series. He gets stonewalled by Bobrovsky. They win an insane Game 6. They're down a goal with 90 seconds left in Game 7 in Boston. They pull the goalie, they score, then they win the OT. And it's just a reminder that sometimes you run too well, and that it will turn. So I know a couple of other people who do that, that they just kind of watch back highlights of their whether it's your biggest win or the one that, everything just went your way. So I'm sure it will turn around. And it looked like it was going to get worse for you, Drew, and for me in Magic Cavs when
I know
the Cavs were down 47-29 in the middle of the second quarter. And I messaged the mutual friend of ours, like before that, when it was like 24-18, I was like, this is done. Like the Cavs, they have no plan whatsoever on offense. They are just running around in circles, and Max Strus is taking contested threes in transition. They got no idea what they're doing. Magic are playing with a purpose. And then it turns, and I think the two guys who really made it turn around for Cleveland, as you'd expect, Sam Merrill and Karis
Sam
LeVert.
Merrill. Yes.
Yeah, those two
no question.
Less Darius Garland, who has been having, frankly, a nervous breakdown now for the entire season, and it culminated in this game where Donovan Mitchell's giving him a pep talk on the sideline in the fourth quarter, being like, you need to wake up because I can't do it all by myself. Just a bizarre game, not a great series, not a great team in Cleveland. It kind of feels like Orlando deserved to win the series. But what did you make of Game 7?
My biggest position in any side or total so far in the playoffs was the under. I multi-clicked it on the open, 199.5, 198.5, 197.5. And then I stopped because I was like, that's enough. You've had enough. It's late. You should just take a breath. This was right on the heels of the Game 6, right? When we knew we were going to have a Game 7. I was feeling very good about my total position and very bad about my Cavs series in the first half. I was like, well, this isn't sniffing 200, but boy, oh boy, the Cavs are gutless. And we'll break down the Cavs more in a minute. But honestly, the way that the whistle from quarter 2, 3, and 4 went was so atypical for a Game 7. Would you believe we haven't had a Game 7 in the NBA playoffs with 65 free throws since 2016? It has been a long time since there was a very closely called Game 7. The trend tends to be the longer we go into a playoff series, the more the refs just let them play. But that was not the case today. And then just the march to the free throw line at the end when the game was completely out of hand and the Magic were making threes and uncontested layups and then sending the Cavs back to the free throw line. It was really like watching a car crash. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's happening again. But your points about the Cavs themselves being a kind of a lost cause, I think is fair. It's a one-man show. Donovan Mitchell is their entire offense. Everybody else is a complete wild card, whether they're going to show up on a given day. Evan Mobley, I don't think is ever going to make a step forward as far as an offensive threat, although he was very, very solid defensively, protecting the rim against some very good rim finishers. Isaac Okoro did a nice job defensively, but still now that's 1-2 defensive parts that you have on the floor together for most of the game. Darius Garland, I don't know what he's bringing to the table that's positive at all, although Donovan Mitchell really working hard to keep him in the games because he knew he needed him out there, at least facilitating and taking some of the shot creation and ball handling off of his plate. So he had a little bit more legs, I thought was pretty important. But no flowers for Darius Garland after this series. Max Strus made some big shots. They were all in the second half, but you're right. Karis LeVert and Sam Merrill, who I did not have on my big go card being a contributor today, really did seem to keep this game from turning into Mavs Suns Game 7. Right? This very much had that potential. Yeah. Because Paolo was cooking and it felt like the Cavs were just going to go into halftime with 30 points and this game was going to be over. But the Merrill and the LeVert buckets in the first half were so important for keeping their heads above water. And then Mitchell took over in the third quarter and the rest is history. But I don't fault the Magic really for their performances. Franz Wagner was a joke, but he was kind of it seemed a little put off by the way they were calling fouls on him, and then just could not buy a bucket today. So if you're going to get a 1 out of 15 from your second most important offensive player, that's bad. If you're going to get 2 out of 13 from your third most important offensive player, Jalen Suggs, that's bad. He looked hurt. So I can't really fault the Magic for going down the way they did. And honestly, what we saw from Paolo Banchero as a playoff contributor, I think is very telling that this guy is more like on the level of future superstar than just guy that can fill it up against bad teams in the regular season. So that was encouraging for like the long arc for the Magic, and I think Magic fans can feel pretty satisfied that their team fought to 6.5 games, but ultimately not enough to get across the finish line on the road against a very desperate team. And I don't know that JB Bickerstaff saved his job with this series win, but I'm not especially impressed with what he's doing out there pushing buttons. I thought Mosley was solid as a playoff coach in general, made some nice decisions as the series went on, just pulling Isaac out of the starting lineup and getting Wendell Carter Jr. in there. So he had a little bit more offensive firepower, was pretty important with the starters. And, overall, I think we learned more about the Magic being a long-term buy and the Cavs being a pretty obvious long-term sell from this series than I think the result would take away, right?
Yeah, I thought Paolo was ultra impressive despite being 10 of 28. I think he showed the kind of diversity to the way he can score. And also just like the thing with Paolo is he's just massive. Like he's just a giant person and he's just overpowering a Coro. Yeah. But Franz Wagner, I think is actually, I would say he's been their best player this season over Paolo because of what he brings defensively as well. It's just the kind of rim pressure he puts on, even if he hasn't been able to make a shot from three. And if he's going to shoot 1 of 15 in the game 7, then you're just not going to win. But with Cleveland, and maybe this is obvious, but what was very kind of visceral in the first quarter is that this team for the past 2 years, for stretch of this season, it's had 2 identities, and neither of them work or make sense. The first identity is Mobley Allen together as the two up, and that just has never worked because it just makes their skill set somewhat reductive, or redundant. And then the other problem is that when they go small and have one of them at the 5, they don't have a small ball 4. Like they don't have anyone who unlocks those lineups and makes it work. And like they tried that with starting Marcus Morris in game 6. And to me, starting Marcus Morris in game 6, it was like, oh, we need a small ball 4 because Mobley is playing center, who's on the roster. It's as though they're like, well, can we get Rashard Lewis? Oh, he's 45 years old. We can't get Rashard Lewis. Who's someone else who has played small ball?
Are they still paying Rashard Lewis?
We have Marcus Morris on the roster. He's completely done. Like he can't help. He shouldn't be playing at all. So they ended up. The answer was Isaac Okoro at small ball 4. Like Isaac Okoro is 6'5", 225, and he gets 3 rebounds per game. Like that's not an answer. It happened to work because the Magic, they got offensive rebounds. They got 18 of them. It's just they kept on missing the second and third shot as well. But there is no one who really unlocks that lineup. I guess Strus is your best shot, and it's not like some guys play bigger than their size on Green. Max Strus and Isaac Okoro don't really play bigger than their size. I don't think so. Unless Darius Garland wakes up, I think this is going to be a short series against the Celtics. The Celtics have opened minus 1,400. The Cavs are plus 800. If you told me that Jared Allen was fully healthy and that Mitchell, who I don't know how Mitchell has scored 89 points in the last 2 games because he looks like he's limping and is really struggling. But so credit to him for gutting through. But if you told me Allen was healthy and Mitchell was healthy and Darius Garland wasn't in an insane asylum, then I would think that the Cavs, not that they're like, going to beat the Celtics, but that the series price would be more like plus 550 than plus 800 or the 10-1 that it opened at. But those things aren't happening, and it feels like this is going to be a quick one now. But what do you think? Any interest in the Cavaliers?
No. Next series. Even at full strength, I think realistically they're taking a game. And Mitchell is capable of putting up a heroic single game effort while the Cavs still lose. So, it's not even like you can't even say, well, what if Mitchell just goes nuclear one game? Well, he could, and they could still lose by margin, right? The rest of this cast of characters is so much weaker than what Boston has out there. Outside of Mitchell, does anyone on the Cavs have like a meaningful role on the Celtics? It's tough for me to really say. I guess,
Evan Mobley,
but not as a starter.
Well, no, not if Porzingis is healthy. But I mean, here's the thing: like talent-wise, the thing with Darius Garland is like Darius Garland for 2 seasons was like a +4 legitimate all-star. Like he was in, you would be taking Darius Garland over or I mean he was in the same breath as like guys like Derek White and Drew Holiday are right now. Like he was in that tier of player, and now he's just useless and getting benched for Karis LeVert. But so that I think is the problem. But like if you stack up, if Garland was what he was last year, you have Donovan Mitchell, who's been, all NBA caliber all season. You have Evan Mobley, who finished third in Defensive Player of the Year. And you have Jared Allen, who is, it's kind of like a fake all-star, but he made an all-star team and he's a legitimately good player. Like those four, they are less talented than Tatum, Brown, White, and Drew. But it's like it shouldn't be that big of a gap. And then the depth beyond that with Porzingis out, it's not like there's a massive difference between LeVert, Strus, Merrill, and this iteration of Horford and Peyton Pritchard and Sam Hauser. It's just the Bickerstaff this is just an awfully coached team. They don't do anything. Like there's no plan. They don't run anything on offense. It's just my turn, your turn. Go put your cape on Donovan. There's no fluency. And meanwhile, like I think Joe Mazzulla is one of the best coaches in the NBA, and it's very unpopular, but I think that you will see that in stark contrast to what Bickerstaff is doing in this series, where everything that the Celtics run, it's with fluency, it's with pace, it's with movement until the last 2 minutes of the game. But their system is just so vastly superior to Cleveland's. And I think that is the difference. But I don't think the talent mismatch is that violent when there's no Porzingis.
Okay.
When they're healthy, and they're not healthy. So it's kind of a moot point.
Yeah, right. And I guess before making any kind of final declarative thoughts or bets on this one, I was mostly just going to try to gauge, the impact of the disparity of rest, which is significant. You have a huge edge for Boston as far as being the rested team in game one, and that carries forward into presumably just a comfortable 2-0 lead going back to Cleveland, and if they take 1 of 2 in Cleveland, it descends in 5. That seems like the most likely outcome, but second most likely outcome is they take both in Cleveland, because I don't have any regard really for what Cleveland is doing offensively right now. So I would make, I have my numbers have the Celtics as pretty solid favorites as currently rostered in Cleveland for both games 3 and 4.
I mean, they're 11-point favorites in game 3. Game 1, which is such an indictment on the Cavs franchise and their coaching staff that can be the case that the Celtics, without their second best player, they are 11-point favorites over you without your, probably your third best player. If we're going to say Mobley is the second best player now and Allen's third. But
do you have a guess as when Allen comes back? Because with 2 bigs, maybe there's a matchup issue, because the depth issue is real with the bigs for Boston. So the
Cavs without Allen, I don't think it's as much of a matchup thing. It's like they just don't have enough talent if Allen's not out there. Like they just need more good players out on the floor, and then you kind of worry about the fit. Like you'd just rather have Jared Allen out there than Tristan Thompson or George Niang. I think with Allen, the problem is that I don't really know what type of rib injury you have that keeps you out for 3 games with your season and everyone's job on the line, that just kind of gets better after a week. Like it seems like he didn't even he didn't go through shoot around in game 7. And to me, it's a red flag that he did go through shoot around in game 6, realized that he couldn't lift his arm, didn't even bother game 7. So I would be surprised. I mean, I guess he's probably not going to play in the series. And as a result, it's probably going to be a shorter series. And it was probably already going to be a short series. But let's jump to the more compelling series in the East. My beloved New York Knicks are -250 favorites against the Pacers, a +200. I think the conventional opinion is that the Knicks are just going to roll here, and that the Pacers are just kind of not ready for this and not ready for the step up in just intensity that the Knicks are going to bring. What's your thought on this series?
If that's the conventional wisdom, then I guess I'm against that a little. Not to say that I believe in the Pacers. I don't rate the Pacers well, but I have lingering questions about how if there's a shadow of what was clearly the most physical series in round one between New York and Philly. In the context of why I am very, very confident still in Boston just kind of getting there in the finals, the Knicks had to fire a lot of bullets to get by the Sixers. And ultimately, the finale was extremely exciting and fun. Those last two games were just insane. Really, the whole series was insane. Game 2, 5, and 6 all had some amazing moments. But that took you just put your players in a really, really tough spot physically. And if you want to come back and say, well, the Knicks are just built different, they're made for this, they are trained for this, they're marathon runners, they're endurance guys, and they're going to bounce back and it's going to be fine. Like, okay, but this is a different style Pacers team that's going to run pace. Like they push the ball. They push in transition. Halliburton is a phenomenal kind of floor general in getting things going quickly. And if they are shooting at all in games 1 or 2, and you are in any way, shape, or form have tired legs, then you're going to have to find a very different set. Okay. And yeah, you could find yourself in a tricky situation where this is 1-1 heading to Indy. And what I'm kind of most intrigued to see is, does Thibodeau have any other speeds for his pitches, for how he's going to try to win games, right? Do you think that there is a Knicks kind of philosophy of, we're going to win games like this, and we think that'll work against Indiana, and we don't have to adjust our approach, right? We're just going to be more physical. We're going to get more offensive rebounds. We're just going to make life hell for them on the perimeter. Do you think that they're going to have to find some other ways to be successful in this series? Because if you point at anything that Indiana does that you have big questions about, a lot of it is just their defense is not very good. And they don't have like elite on-ball defenders. They don't have great point of attack defense. They don't have elite rim protection. But they do. But like, I don't know that the Knicks have a ton of players that obviously take advantage of that. So, I kind of feel like there's going to be a learning curve here for the Knicks to find their final form to get by this Pacers team. So I'm kind of leaning early in the series, taking the points with Indy. And then when it's 1-1 headed back to Indianapolis, then get involved with the Knicks series price, because at 250, it's not a bet for me. I'm more closer to just over 200 here for the Knicks. So I don't think there's really any action to take now series wise, but I don't mind taking the points with the Pacers in game 1, given specifically how physical that Sixers series was. Does any of this make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I think that to me, the whole series is just like, what Tyrese Halliburton are we getting? Are we getting the guy who, before the All-Star break, was 22-12 on 63% true shooting and was like a second-team All-NBA guy? Or are we getting the guy post-All-Star break who's averaging 17 points a game on worse true shooting percentage than Kobe White? Like, which version are we getting? And I would think that we're probably going to get the latter one, because he's been dealing with hamstring and back issues, and he just doesn't look right or explosive out there. And if like they're getting the version of Halliburton that he's been for, a few months now, then I just don't think they have the talent to stack up against the Knicks without home court. And to me, the big problem for Indiana as well is that they don't play with size. Like, they don't play like they're the 5th worst defensive rebounding team in the NBA. The Knicks are the best offensive rebounding team. And yes, the Pacers are going to, in theory, hurt the Knicks in transition. But like, if the Knicks are getting offensive rebounds, it's going to stop transition. So I think that the Knicks just have more talent. I think that the rest between game 6 in Philly and game 1 is going to be helpful for them here. I think on Tibbs, in terms of the Knicks having things up their sleeve, my thing with Tibbs is that in terms of playoff adjustments, I think that he does like kind of the most obvious thing. And he leans into what the obvious adjustment is. Tyrese Maxey cooked us in game 5. Well, we're going to put DiVincenzo on him and just send two at him whenever he's in pick and roll. Tyrese Maxey hit a 3 at the end of game 5. We're going to foul him now and go out of our way to foul him even too early, because they fouled him with 10 seconds left on the clock. We gave up a 3 because Mitchell Robinson was on the floor late in game 5. Now Mitchell Robinson's coming out. Like, he very much is like, this happens, Thus, I'm just going to do what the most obvious thing is next. I don't think there's any like 4-dimensional chess with Tom Thibodeau. I think he's very kind of meat and potatoes in terms of how he coaches. I think that's probably going to be fine. Like, if you want to predict what the matchups are, just predict what the kind of like Occam's razor, like what's the favorite in the market for the adjustment to be, or for the matchup to be. That's probably what Tibbs is going to do. It's not necessarily the worst thing. It's not the most inspiring thing. And I think that he does leave some stuff on the ground, but I think that they should have enough in this series. And I think Brunson, here's the thing, is that I think Brunson is actually going to find things a lot easier against the Pacers than he did against the Sixers. And he just had 4 games. Like, just getting Embiid out of the paint, I think, is going to be so huge for this Knicks team overall. And I understand that it felt like Brunson and no one else in the Philly series. That was a big part of that was because Embiid was just shutting off the rim and no one else wanted to go in the paint. So I think that the Knicks offense is going to look more fluid in this series.
Okay. We only saw one game between these two in the regular season in like their current form, and it was like mid-February. Pacers, by the way, went 2-1 against the Knicks in the regular season. I'm not a guy that uses a ton of what did you see in the regular season as an indicator other than just general tendencies. But Pacers did pretty well in their first game where they pushed the pace, won 140-126. Then the Knicks come back and get the second one. In the third game, when they were both kind of in their final forms, it was Pacers 125, Knicks 111 in the Garden. All of these games were lined kind of around to pick them, 2.5 to 3 to 4 points kind of for all these games, depending on who's home. And I don't really think that you're going to learn a ton of looking at these, but I do worry a bit about this Knicks team. It's such a different style of game that Indy's bringing to the table relative to what you just had to, you just had to solve in a very, very challenging setting against the Sixers. So I agree with you. The Brunson's going to have a relatively easy go of it here. And Halliburton's health is probably going to be the key as to whether this is Knicks 4-1 or Knicks 4-2. But again, like I'm thinking that there's probably going to be a little bit of a feeling each other out early here, and that this is going to go 1-1 back to Indianapolis. And if that happens, then I think that's when you buy Knicks.
Yep. I think so. That last Pacers-Knicks game, so I was looking at that as well. Like, I think that was right after the trade deadline when the Knicks had kind of gutted the team a little bit, and Hartenstein and Robinson didn't play in that game. Neither did Anunoby. Like, and also like that was back when Benedict Mathurin was playing for the Pacers. So also, like, after Wolves-Suns, I'm out on valuing the regular season matchups at all.
Like that one was unique.
I think the biggest mismatch possible. I'll never forget as well when I think the Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett Nets, I think they swept the LeBron Heat in the regular season 4-0, and then they match up in the playoffs. It's like, oh, this is the kryptonite for Miami. Oh, Miami actually won 4-1. So I don't subscribe to it too much. I think game one will be interesting because it's a good test of like, all right, does it take longer for the Knicks to get adjusted to Indy's speed, or does it take the Pacers longer to get adjusted to just the Knicks' physicality and intensity? Sure. And I kind of think it's going to be the latter. My thought on this series, it's not like super scientific, but I just think the Knicks are just so much tougher and so much more physical, and that they will not shoot themselves in the foot the way that the Pacers do. The Pacers, and this is forgotten now because they won Game 6, the Pacers Game 5 showing in Milwaukee was an absolute disgrace. Patrick Beverley was like a plus 36 in that game. Like, they can't pull that stuff against the Knicks. They'll lose those games by 40. So I think ultimately the Knicks should progress with relative ease. I would say that your modal outcome is probably a 4-2 Knicks win. All right, just 2 matches left. Arsenal continue their fight to stay atop the table when they face Man United at Old Trafford. Tune in this Sunday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern, only on Peacock. Man United, by the way, on Monday when you're listening, I believe they're plus 180 favorite, plus 180 underdogs against Crystal Palace, which is just a shocking reflection on the state of the great Manchester United that they're plus 180 at Palace. All right, a franchise that's in a better spot now, the Minnesota Timberwolves. who are doing a bit better than Man United relative to expectation. They take game one, which was a phenomenal game, everything that Cavs Magic game 7 wasn't. And the Minnesota Timberwolves are now favored to beat the Denver Nuggets. They're the favorite to win the Western Conference, which still seems strange to say out loud, not that it's unjustified. They are 5.5-point dogs against Denver in game 2, a little zigzag a play there. How do you think this series shakes out now?
I had the Timberwolves in game 1. I said I was going to bet him in game 2, but I haven't yet. I'm probably going to do it though. I think that they have kind of proven that they kind of match up exactly the way you want to with this team. And honestly, there are more questions to be answered by Denver right now. And in particular, kind of, can you get a good 4 quarters and a healthy 4 quarters out of Jamal Murray? And that's sort of going to dictate here. And, it seems to me, at least, there seems to be a pattern where Jamal Murray can kind of give you one good half right now. And if Anthony Edwards continues to play at this level, you need more than that. And I really, really, really hate the superlative kind of comps that people get when some guy breaks out in the playoffs. But it's starting to get less absurd that Anthony Edwards is getting comped to Jordan because of the style of play and what he can do in these moments. It is wildly visually impressive what he's doing out there. And the Timberwolves they seem to be still doing some silly things, particularly Karl Anthony Towns defensively. But there's so many more ways they can make life difficult for you with their length, with their height, the size just in general. And I don't know that that's going to be enough to prevail when it's all said and done in this series, but it's going to be enough to keep these games close. And if you're going to give them 5.5 points, I'm probably just going to end up taking it again.
Yeah. So I want to get to a thought on the Nuggets, but first of all, keen for your thoughts on this. I think the most interesting question in terms of how you price the NBA right now is, how do you rate Anthony Edwards as a player right now in the playoffs? Yeah. Because based on his regular season output, this guy was a lot closer to Jamal Murray than Nikola Jokic. Yes. He was not. I mean, I know he's got some down ballot MVP votes. Like, he wasn't that caliber of player. I think I've watched more Timberwolves basketball the last 2 years than any other team. And I don't understand how this team for 2 years has been an absolute clown show on offense at end of games. And it's just cat barreling into people and Ant taking step backs. And now in round 2 of the Western Conference, with the whole world watching, Anthony Edwards is like patiently diagnosing defenses and making the right decision every time and not settling and taking Aaron Gordon off the dribble and drawing fouls late in games. Yeah. Like, I just don't understand like what this is. And with guys like, so a couple guys whose ratings have to go, I think, way up in the playoffs are Jimmy Butler and Nikola Jokic, just purely because they just hunt their shot a lot more in the playoffs. And when they're looking to score, they just become better players. With Anthony Edwards, the adjustment is like, oh, my basketball IQ went up significantly. And I'm just way more focused. It's like, is that actually a thing? Because he's been awesome in all 3 of his playoff runs. He was awesome against Denver last year. He's been magnificent in this playoffs. He outplayed Nikola Jokic in game 1. Like, I don't understand. Like, this guy, if he during the regular season was a +4, is he just like a +7 player now? Is Anthony Edwards just treated like the 6th best player in the NBA?
What's your plus for Jokic? Just out of curiosity.
Jokic is like a +8. If Jokic is the best player in the league in +8 kind of territory.
I'm okay at 6. 7 is a lot.
Yeah, I don't think he's there either. But it's like,
give me 75% of him. Yeah, sure.
Is he better than Jalen Brunson?
I think yes.
Yeah, I think probably Brunson, agree. Which is kind of like Brunson was a lot better in the regular season than Edwards.
I know. It's not
like Brunson's gone down.
He was, and some of, I mean, the 2-way we haven't even talked. We're not even talking about his defense. And his motor. Like, he seems like he's just got it. And I don't know, man. It's I don't think this is a guy catching a heater. I think this is just what you're going to be expecting from him in some of these big moments and going down the stretch in these playoffs. And if he has, if he goes through a stretch where, and it's not injury related, where all of a sudden it's not as confident, it's back to the old, kind of, you know, less cerebral basketball from Anthony Edwards, then we'll have to reevaluate, and maybe then that's just the answer. But for now, at least, the 5 games of sample we have of him as a playoff player this year, he is elite and good enough to at least kind of narrow the gap with the Nuggets. And I think his supporting cast is stronger than what Jokic is working with right now, largely because the depth and injury questions surrounding the guards.
Yep, I agree with that. And I think the knock on the Wolves and why they were, this team was like 12-1, 13-1 late in the season to win the West. And I think the reason for that is that like Ant just isn't the same caliber of player as Jokic, Luka, and SGA. I was like, well, if he is, then the Wolves have better supporting players than any of those teams do.
Mm-hmm.
And they're the best team in the West if he's, in the same ballpark. If he's a +6, +6.5 type of player. I just don't understand how his playoff adjustment has just become significantly smarter and make way better decisions. But it seems like he is doing that. And I think the main thing there, and maybe I'm conflating just having an aggressive mindset with being smarter, because it does seem like he's just not settling for jumpers at the end of these games when he realizes that he can leverage his athleticism. Mm-hmm. But he's making the right passes. And my knock on the Wolves has always been that, they're 5 guys that they start with and they close with. I think you had one really cerebral player in there out of 5, and that was Mike Conley. Well, if Ant is very cerebral too, and he's the guy whose basketball intelligence matters vastly more than any other player on the team because the ball's in his hands the most. And then McDaniels and Towns are just kind of standing there, and Gobert is rolling to the rim. Then all of a sudden, this team is awesome, and they deserve their favoritism in the series and in the West. The one thing I'll say about the Nuggets, and we talked about this a little bit, like I've never bought the idea that this team is a juggernaut, because like before the All-Star break last year, before they kind of took off the last 6 weeks of the season when they had the 1 seed wrapped, they were a +4.5 net rating. This season, they're a +5.5 net rating. Like, I'm sorry, you just don't get to be a juggernaut who is going to walk through a conference if for basically 2 years you're a +5 type of team. And in the regular season. Now, I understand that scales up in the playoffs specifically for them because of Jokic and because they shorten their rotation, which matters more for them than any other team because of how good their starters are and how weak their depth is. But like, I think this team is like 1 point better on neutral than the Wolves, Thunder, and Mavs. I don't think they're significantly better than any of those teams.
Yeah, it's like you're looking at my spreadsheet that's open right now. That's, I think, exactly how they should be rated. And honestly, the distribution around their rating as we go forward in the playoffs is biased low because of the injury questions. Honestly, so not to kind of make this hey, hit the panic button, Nuggets fans, Nuggets backers, but you handily won the bench minutes in this game. And you handily lost the game. Like that's not good because winning the bench minutes regularly for this Nuggets squad is not likely. So if there's kind of a little bit more of a balance from the from the bench units here, and you can't solve what they're doing to you defensively with all that size out there, then all of a sudden this could get real interesting. But the first half is going to be telling from the Nuggets. If you get a little bit, I actually here's I don't even know if this is a hot take, but like, I don't think we've seen a good full 4 quarters of Nuggets playoff basketball yet this year so far. And I know it's only round 2 and we're only 1 game into this series, but they've been starting slow kind of capitulating late. And I think, if you're not getting an honest effort out of them for 4 quarters in game 2, then start to seriously reevaluate if they should even have a point on those other teams.
Yep. No, I think that is fair. All right. Quick thought on Mavs Thunder. We'll talk more about this one tomorrow. But Thunder minus 120 favorites in the series. Mavs even money. The price has been bouncing around both ways, really. Thunder got out to minus 135 or so, and then some places they're minus 115. Have you had a bet on this series?
Yes, I'm on the Thunder.
Okay.
I would play the Thunder back out to 135. I didn't play them there. I'm in this 120 range here, and I think there's a fair edge there. I would stop in the 130s. And I think I'm gonna end up going down with the Thunder one way or the other this round, I think, and I'm gonna have to kind of sincerely figure out what to do with all of my future exposure now if they get into the Western Conference Finals. But this team is, I think, being still pretty aggressively underrated on defense, and the fact that the Dallas Mavericks took as long as it took in that series against the Clippers to find themselves offensively and now have a very different style of defense with younger wings to solve in this series with an even better coach. Like this is I think it's going to take a little bit of time for the Mavericks to get their feet under them in this series, and the fact that you're playing 2 games in OKC to start. And that OKC is the more well-rested team, and just overall in general, the healthier team, considering that there's questions swirling about Luka. I'm not sure I understand why this isn't closer to 135. So Thunder for me, and I'm going to lay the points in game 1 as well, but we'll save some of that discussion for tomorrow.
Yep, absolutely. All right, we'll get more into that. I do think it is interesting. Like the market absolutely adores the Mavericks and has
Loves them.
for weeks now, and whether that's justified or not. I mean, I've been pretty pro Mavericks, I think, relative to most people who talk about basketball. But just with Luka's knee, it's a little bit of a concern that he didn't play great in 5 out of 6 games in the Clippers series. So that would be my apprehension about the Mavericks. But we'll get into more detail on that one tomorrow. All right, the road to the Indianapolis 500 later this month. Drew continues this Saturday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern with the Indy Grand Prix on NBC and Peacock. Find out who takes the checkered flag at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course. All right, let's close out with a little puck as I nervously watch on the screen above the Stars trying to kill off this Vegas power play with 10 minutes left in the third period, needing Texas hockey to prevail. But let's talk about the Eastern Conference. The Panthers are the favorite now to win the East at plus 200, the Rangers plus 220, Canes plus 270, Bruins plus 425. Rangers flipping into second favorite after they took a bit of a weird game 1 against Carolina, where I think Carolina went 0 for 5 on the power play and the Rangers went 2 for 2, and that's pretty much your game. Yeah. Did you catch any of that one or any of Leafs Bruins game 7?
I caught a lot of both. Leafs Bruins was that the only game 7 of all the hockey? I think it was, right? Or no, this one is now. Yes. Is the other one, right? Now, yep. It was the 2 series that I wanted to see game 7 the least was that one in the NHL and Mavericks Cavs in the NBA, and we got game 7s in both. And it was a rough hang, and I feel bad for the Maple Leafs fans at this point. Cannot get by the Boston Bruins even with a 1-0 lead at the going into the death there. The futures market, the futures pool looks correctly priced to me. And also, like, I've watched a lot of Hurricanes hockey over the years. Went to some Stanley Cup run in 06, but it feels like deja vu all over again that they can't succeed on the power play. I don't know why that's their Achilles heel. But that's not a new thing. This is kind of just something that has always been talked about with Carolina. Anyway, I think Rangers likely at least give Carolina a deep run here, if not, eliminate them, which is door flies wide open for Panthers at that point. I think the Panthers are clearly much better than the Bruins. If that's even, and I know that they played in round 1 last year, I believe, and the Panthers knocked the Bruins out, if I'm remembering correctly. And that quality between those teams looked pretty obviously like the Panthers, deserved to win that series, I thought. And I think this is going to be a shorter series. So Panthers probably come through in 5, if I had to say so. And I think the Rangers may pull off some comeback potential. The Hurricanes may pull off a comeback in the Rangers in this series, but I think fundamentally they have some questions to answer about their power play in particular.
Yep. I think often I like kind of ugly, gritty game sevens, defensive masterpieces on both sides. Like Leafs Bruins just kind of sucked. Like it just wasn't a good game. Like it was a bad game of hockey. Like just not it wasn't well played. Wasn't well officiated either.
Yeah.
Like I was watching it
2 for 2.
Yeah. Watching it with the sound off, it's like, why isn't that a penalty shot for the Leafs? Like, what's going on here? And then I would go on Twitter and be like, yeah, everyone is complaining about the same thing. It was not just a weakness in my grasp of the sport, but no, that wasn't well played. Came out of that series thinking that the Panthers, and look, like the Bruins, they have really good goaltending, which maybe gives them a little bit more variance. They also just cannot score, which perhaps reduces their variance. So the Panthers are a much better team. They're minus 175 for a reason. They'll miss Sam Bennett for game 1, I think, but they should get him back, which will help. But I mean, the reason they lose is that, it's hockey. And sometimes, the wrong team, a team dominates expected goals and just kind of a couple of bounces go the wrong way. And then all of a sudden they're down 3-1 instead of up 3-1, but they're the better team there. Canes Rangers, I think, will be a long series. Take your point about the Canes, about this. The Sunday game felt a lot like vintage Canes, where it's like you're creating a lot of opportunities. Last year in particular, they just didn't have the finishing talent to take advantage of those, where they are kind of a expected goals wrought type of team because they just pepper the goal face, but they're not high danger. I think this team is a little different and a little better, and having Jake Gensel will help them, but didn't really manifest. And that whole series is going to be power plays and penalty kills, because at 5-on-5, the Hurricanes are better than the Rangers, but the Rangers have the better goaltender. And if the Rangers are going to be better on the power play, then they may well win that series. But that will be close. And we'll talk about the West once we have clarity, after hopefully Texas hockey pulls through here. Minus 1,000 on the money line. Feels a very suspect minus 1,000.
Yeah, that's pretty confident
as we speak. But anyway, we'll touch on that and the Stanley Cup champion market later in the week. But for now, we are done. So don't forget to check out NBCsports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks to those watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to rate and subscribe. Also a reminder to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. From Jay Croucher and Drew Dinsick, we'll see you tomorrow.